The Third Siege of Gibraltar was mounted between February–June 1333 by a Moorish army under the Prince Abd al-Malik Abd al-Wahid of Morocco. The fortified town of Gibraltar had been held by Castile since 1309, when it had been seized from the Moorish Emirate of Granada. The attack on Gibraltar was ordered by the recently crowned Marinid ruler Abu al-Hasan Ali ibn Othman in response to an appeal by the Nasrid ruler, Muhammad IV of Granada. The onset of the siege took the Castilians by surprise. The stocks of food in Gibraltar were heavily depleted at the time due to the thievery of the town's governor, Vasco Pérez de Meira, who had looted the money that was meant to have been spent on food for the garrison and to pay for the upkeep of the castle and fortifications. After over 4 months of siege and bombardment by Moorish catapults, the garrison and townspeople were reduced to near starvation and surrendered to Abd al-Malik. Start of the siege. In 1309, Castilian troops under Ferdinand IV of Castile captured Gibraltar, then known as the Medinat al-Fath, from the Muslim-ruled Emirate of Granada. Its fortifications were repaired and improved by the Castilians. In 1315 the Granadans attempted to retake Gibraltar in the brief and unsuccessful Second Siege of Gibraltar. The alliance between the Nasrids of Granada and the Marinids of Morocco had fallen into abeyance following the loss of Gibraltar, but the accession of the Marinid Sultan Abu al-Hasan Ali ibn Othman led to a renewal of the pact between the two Muslim states. A force of 7,000 men under the command of Abu al-Hasan's son, Abd al-Malik, was secretly transported across the Strait of Gibraltar to rendezvous with the forces of Muhammad IV of Granada at Algeciras in February 1333. The Castilians were distracted by the coronation of King Alfonso XI and were slow to respond to the invasion force, which was able to lay siege to Gibraltar before much of a response could be organized. Gibraltar was ill-prepared for this eventuality. Its governor, Don Vasco Pérez de Meira, had looted the funds allocated by the crown to pay for food and maintenance of the town's defenses, using it to buy land for himself near Jerez. He also misappropriated the food itself, selling it to the Moors, and kept the garrison under strength. The shipwreck of a grain ship off the Gibraltarian coast, only 8 days before the siege began, gave the garrison a little extra food supply, but as events were to prove, it was not nearly enough. The town consisted of a series of individually fortified districts that reached from the dockyard on the seafront to a castle several hundred feet up the slope of the Rock of Gibraltar. By the end of February, Abd al-Malik's forces had captured the dockyard and the area on the rock above the castle, where he set up siege engines. Castilian attempts to organize a relief force were hampered by Granadan raids on their borders that were intended to divert Castilian attention. In addition, political disputes between Alfonso and his vassals delayed the raising of a land force to lift the siege. Although Alfonso had a naval force at his disposal under Admiral Alfonso Jafre de Tenorio, the Moorish ships supporting the siege were positioned close inshore where it was too dangerous to attempt an attack. Fall and capture of Gibraltar. It was not until June that Alfonso was able to put a relief force into the field. His senior advisors had argued against staging a relief expedition on the grounds that it would mean fighting both Granada and Fez, which they saw as too much of a risky venture. After 8 days of arguments in Seville, Alfonso got his way and was able to persuade his rebellious vassal Juan Manuel, Prince of Villena, to support him against the Moors. He marched his army to Jerez, where they camped by the river Guadalete, 4 days' march from Gibraltar. It was, however, already too late for the defenders. The situation in Gibraltar was desperate by mid-June. The food had run out and the townspeople in garrison had been reduced to eating their own shields, belts and shoes in an attempt to gain sustenance from the leather from which they were made. Admiral Jafre attempted to sling bags of flour into the town by firing them over the walls from ship-mounted catapults. but the Moors were able to drive the Castilian ships away. The Moors' own catapults had caused severe damage to Gibraltar's defences, and the weakened garrison was in no shape to resist further. On 17 June 1333, Vasco Perez surrendered Gibraltar after agreeing terms with Abd al-Malik. It was reportedly discovered that he had been hoarding a supply of food in his own storerooms, enough for feeding the whole sieged population for 5 days, and that he had been keeping a number well-fed Moorish captives in his own house with the apparent intention of ransoming them. He fled to North Africa to escape punishment for his failures. As chronicler of the King Alfonso XI wrote, it was his duty either to deliver the fortress into the hands of his lord, the king, or die in its defense. He did neither and was condemned by the Castilians as a traitor. The other defenders were allowed to leave with honor as a mark of respect for their courage in defending the town for so long. The fall of Gibraltar was rapturously received back in Morocco. The Moorish chronicler Ibn Marzouk recorded that while he was studying in Tlemcen, his teacher announced to his class, "Rejoice, community of the faithful, because God has had the goodness to restore Gibraltar to us." According to Ibn Marzouk, the jubilant students spurt out into cries of praise, gave thanks and shed tears of joy. Bibliography. F.A. Darren, Finlayson, Clive. The Fortifications of Gibraltar. Oxford. Osprey Publishing. ISBN 1-84603016-1. Hills, George. Rock of Contention. A History of Gibraltar. London. Robert Hale and Company. ISBN 0-7091-4352-4. O'Callaghan, Joseph F. The Gibraltar Crusade. Castile and the Battle for the Strait. University of Pennsylvania Press. ISBN 9780812243024.